There's a moment after someone hurts you when everything in you wants to react, to shout, to explain, to get even, to make them feel the weight of what they did. That need to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. It's real. It burns, it takes over your mind. And it whispers to you that silence is surrender. That if you say nothing, you're weak. That if you don't respond, they win. But here's what most people never learn. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is restraint. Silence is the move that says, you're not even worth the sound of my voice. When someone hurts you and you say nothing, when you give them no explanation, no reaction, no energy, that is power. That is the moment you stop being their puppet. That is when they lose access to what they need most. Your attention, because toxic people don't feed off resolution. They feed off reaction. They need to see you spin. They need to hear your voice crack. They want your confusion, your tears, your rage. It reassures them that they still have control over your emotional state, that they still hold weight in your world. So they'll press every button. They'll distort the truth. They'll talk behind your back. They'll pretend like they didn't know what they were doing. And then they'll wait for you to crack, wait for you to chase. Wait for you to say something, anything. But when you don't, when you stay grounded, when you walk away with nothing but silence and posture, that's when the damage begins. That's when they feel the shift. Because you didn't collapse. You didn't chase. You didn't explain. You just disappeared into your dignity. Silence is not the absence of a message. It is a message. A loud one. It says, I don't need closure. I don't need revenge. I don't need validation. I've already moved on from this. And that is the most uncomfortable thing you can do to someone who expected you to break. You want to hurt them back. Heal. Grow. Thrive. But do it quietly. Do it without warning. Do it without broadcasting your glow up. Let the results speak for you. Let your silence build tension in their story. Let it force them to sit with themselves in a room where your voice no longer exists. They'll talk. They'll guess. They'll tell people you're cold, you're arrogant, you're fake. But none of that matters. What matters is that you didn't give them the satisfaction of watching you shatter. You didn't perform pain for them. You didn't turn your heartbreak into theater. And that robs them of the script they were counting on. Because they expected chaos. But you gave them nothing. And that kind of nothing. That's devastating to someone who needs your reaction to feel powerful. There's a quiet kind of revenge that happens when you no longer give the person who hurt you a place in your thoughts. When you stop rehearsing conversations in your mind. When you stop checking their feed. When you stop looking for signs that they still care. You reclaim your time. You reclaim your energy. And most importantly, you reclaim your peace. And they'll feel that peace even if they never hear from you again. Because people always feel it when the access they once had is gone. They'll sense the distance. They'll notice your absence. And suddenly, the silence becomes louder than anything you could have said. It takes more strength to stay silent than to speak. Especially when your whole body wants to scream. But the people who hurt you aren't moved by your words. They're moved when those words never come. When your stillness speaks a language they can't twist. When your energy vanishes and they can't get it back. That's what gets under their skin. That's what keeps them up at night. Not your anger, not your sadness, but your complete disinterest in proving anything to them. Because nothing is more final than silence. It doesn't ask for understanding. It doesn't beg for apology. It just ends the story without warning. This isn't about playing games. It's about knowing your value. About choosing self-respect over performance. About refusing to lower your frequency just to show someone how much they hurt you. If they were capable of caring, they wouldn't have done it in the first place. So don't waste your breath trying to make them see. Let them feel your absence. Let them sit in the silence they created. That's justice. That's power. And that's something no words could ever deliver with the same precision. Silence is a decision. It says, I will not waste another moment of my life giving energy to someone who made the choice to hurt me. You let go, not because they deserve peace, but because you do. You walk away, not because it's easy, but because it's smart. Because every time you choose silence, you choose to protect your power. And when someone hurts you, that power is the one thing they were hoping to take. Don't let them have it. Don't give them your reaction. Don't hand them your voice. Just walk quietly, fully, completely, and leave them wondering how you became untouchable without ever saying a single word. You don't destroy the people who hurt you by tearing them down. You destroy them by becoming someone they can no longer reach, no longer read, no longer disturb. You want revenge? Get better. Get so focused on your own healing, your own growth, your own next level that they don't recognize who you've become. You don't scream it. You don't post it. You just live it, quietly, consistently, ruthlessly. Because the most devastating response to betrayal is transformation. When you no longer resemble the version of you they tried to break, that's when they feel the loss. Not when you fight, not when you react, but when you rise in silence. There's a kind of power that can't be faked. It's the power that comes from rebuilding yourself from the ground up after someone shattered you. And the most dangerous part of that power, it doesn't speak. It doesn't explain, it doesn't prove, it just moves. Moves in a new direction, moves at a higher frequency, moves far beyond anything they imagined you could become. Because here's the truth, most people hurt you expecting you to stay small, to stay bitter, to stay stuck. They never thought you'd find strength in the ruins. They never thought the pain they caused would become the foundation of your discipline. That's what burns them. Not your words. Not your anger. Your evolution. Let them wonder where you went. Let them guess how you're doing. Let them see pieces of your glow up in glimpses, never the full picture. Not because you're hiding, but because you've outgrown the need to be seen by the same eyes that once looked at you like you were disposable. The more you grow, the less noise you make, the more powerful you become, the less access you give. And those who once hurt you will start to realize something they never expected. You didn't need to destroy them to win. You just needed to rise far enough that they're no longer in the conversation. Success is not a performance. It's a process. And if you're doing it right, it shows without you ever needing to say a word. You walk differently. You speak less but mean more. You choose your battles wisely. You don't show up to every argument you're invited to. Because you know now, attention is currency, and you don't spend yours on people who betrayed your trust. That's the smartest way to destroy the ones who hurt you. Not by dragging them into your next chapter, but by making sure your next chapter doesn't include them at all. People expect you to collapse. That's what they're watching for. They think, I know what I did must have wrecked them. But then they see you, composed, focused, moving with purpose. And that destroys them more than any confrontation ever could. You see, pain gives you two choices, revenge or refinement. And refinement is always louder, because it shifts your entire presence. You stop needing to be seen. You stop needing to be heard. You become the storm they thought would break you. Only now it's moving in silence, and it's heading somewhere they can't follow. Don't underestimate the weapon of indifference. You don't need to block them, insult them, or broadcast how much you've changed. Just level up, shift your standards. Refuse to go backward. Carry yourself like someone who knows what they're worth now. Like someone who doesn't explain, doesn't argue, doesn't revisit what disrespected them. That's not avoidance. That's mastery. And mastery never announces itself. It doesn't warn. It just arrives. Fully formed, detached, unbothered. And when they see that, when they feel the emptiness where your energy used to be, they'll understand what they lost. Even if they pretend not to, you want to destroy what hurt you. Don't give it a stage. Don't give it a role in your story. Move in such a way that they become a footnote, not the climax. Just background noise to a breakthrough they never saw coming. And do it all without flinching, without defending, without needing closure. Because when you heal, when you evolve, when you rise quietly and with conviction, you don't just change your life. You rewrite their memory of you. You make them realize they didn't break you. They forged you. And that's a truth they'll carry in silence. Long after you've gone, that's what silent strength looks like. That's how you respond without speaking. That's how you destroy what tried to destroy you. By becoming something it can no longer reach, understand, or affect. You don't climb back down into the pit to prove your progress. You keep climbing. You stop explaining why you left. You stop proving you were right. You let your absence speak. And when you show the world that your glow didn't come from revenge, but from self-respect, self-discipline, and unshakable focus, that's when you win. That's when you destroy everything they did, not with fire, not with fury, but with your own quiet evolution. There's something unshakable about a person who chooses peace over performance. Who doesn't need to prove a point, or correct every lie, or scream their side of the story. When someone hurts you, the natural instinct is to make them see it, to force recognition, to drag them into the pain they caused and make them own it. But if that person was capable of caring, they wouldn't have done what they did. You don't need to make someone understand your value. That's not your job. Your job is to understand your value so deeply that their behavior no longer defines it. You want to destroy the person who tried to destroy your spirit. Don't tell them how much they hurt you. Show them how little access they now have to the healed version of you. Peace is not passive. It's not silence because you're afraid or weak. It's silence because you're so grounded that their chaos no longer moves you. That's a shift they can't handle. When they can no longer reach you emotionally, when they no longer have a seat at your table, they start to panic. Not because they love you, but because they've lost their influence. You take that influence back the second you decide to stop responding. Not just with words, but with energy. You stop checking on them. You stop wondering what they're thinking. You stop replaying what you wish you'd said. And instead, you redirect all that energy inward, toward rebuilding yourself privately, patiently, powerfully. Toxic people don't care if you're angry. In fact, they count on it. Your anger tells them they still matter, that they still own space in your mind. But when you choose silence, when you choose indifference, when you choose peace, they lose the control they thought they had, because silence forces them to sit with themselves, with their guilt, with the empty space where your validation used to be. And most of them won't admit it, but they feel that silence more than they ever felt your words. Because your silence is unfamiliar. It makes them nervous. It's the one thing they can't spin, can't twist, can't manipulate. You reclaim your power the moment you stop explaining it. The moment you stop justifying your distance. The moment you stop needing them to know why they no longer have access. They don't need to know. They only need to feel it. And they will. Because when someone is used to being the center of your emotional orbit, your absence is disorienting. They'll look for cracks. They'll test you. They'll try to provoke you back into the old dynamic. But you've already exited that chapter. And you don't owe anyone a reread of the pain they authored. You owe yourself silence, discipline, healing. Let your peace be louder than your pain. Let your energy be so centered that even when they speak your name, it no longer touches you. That's the kind of strength that doesn't need revenge. That's the kind of revenge that looks like evolution. You stop playing the part they cast you in. You become unreachable, unrateable. Not because you're hiding, but because you've grown so far past the need for their recognition that they no longer even exist in the story you're telling now. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is say nothing. No call out, no warning, just silence. A clean exit, a closed door. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the discomfort of being invisible to someone who once gave them everything. That kind of silence is surgical. It cuts deeper than words ever could. Because it's not driven by ego. It's driven by clarity. And clarity is the one thing they never thought you'd have. They thought you'd always be emotional, always reactive, always seeking closure or justice or attention. But you don't want any of that anymore. You want freedom. And freedom starts with silence. There is no greater revenge than becoming someone who no longer needs to be understood by people who mishandled you. You don't need them to see your growth. You don't need them to feel your pain. You need to live in a way that makes both irrelevant. You rise so high they can't even breathe the air you walk in. Not out of pride, but out of peace. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to choose silence over chaos, clarity over confusion, and progress over performance. Let them tell their version. Let them act unbothered. Let them pretend they didn't notice your absence. The truth is, they feel it. And the more you stay silent, the louder it becomes. They'll go back through old texts. They'll rewatch moments in their mind. They'll wonder if you ever think of them. And the answer will be no. Not because you don't remember, but because you've rewritten your life in such a way that they're no longer part of the equation. That's not revenge. That's liberation. That's choosing peace not as a reaction, but as a lifestyle. You no longer speak from pain, you move in peace. And that peace, untouchable, silent, consistent, is what destroys them far more than any words ever could. There is a specific kind of power that is built in silence. Not the silence that comes from fear. Not the silence of shutting down, but the silence that comes from clarity. That says, I no longer owe you my voice. I no longer owe you my pain. I no longer owe you a reaction. Because once someone has shown you they are willing to hurt you, to twist your words, to gaslight your intentions, to break your trust, then the only response that protects your power is emotional discipline. Not yelling, not chasing, not proving, just discipline. Because discipline ends the game. Discipline says, I will not play on a field where the rules change every time I start winning. You destroy the influence of someone who hurt you the moment you stop giving them emotional currency. The moment you refuse to engage in the drama. The moment you stop explaining what they already know they did. And the truth is, they know. They always know. But toxic people survive by pretending they don't. They play dumb. They act shocked. They ask, why are you acting different? Even though they know exactly what they did to shift the dynamic. They don't want honesty. They want access. They want your forgiveness without earning it. They want your empathy without respecting it. But emotional intelligence means you no longer reward behavior that disrespects your standards. Retaliation feels good for a moment. You think if you just tell them off, if you just call them out, if you just hurt them back, you'll feel better. But you won't. Because the second you react, you give them exactly what they wanted. Proof that they still have power over you. They get to say, look, see, she's crazy. He's unstable. They're emotional. They get to make your reaction the story instead of their behavior. That's the trap. That's why you don't take the bait. That's why you don't fall into the cycle. You outsmart it. You exit it. You protect your peace by not responding to energy that is designed to provoke chaos. When you stop responding, you take the oxygen out of the fire. You make the game boring. You become unrateable. That's what scares them. Not your anger, not your confrontation, your neutrality, your stillness, your absence of response. Because people who are used to controlling you emotionally don't know what to do when you no longer react. They try to bait you back in with kindness, with apologies, with confusion. They test your silence. They press harder. And when you remain still, when you remain calm, they are left alone with themselves. And for people who run from accountability, that silence is unbearable. It's not easy to stay calm when someone lies about you. It's not easy to stay calm when someone disrespects you and then acts like you're the problem. But the goal is not to prove you're right. The goal is to protect your peace. The goal is to build a level of control so grounded that nothing they say or do can shake it. That's what breaks their grip, because they're used to pulling strings. They're used to your emotions being at their command. And now they can't reach you. They can't even find the version of you they used to control. And that terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. You don't need to announce your peace. You live it. You walk into rooms and feel light, because you didn't drag their weight in with you. You start asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, why did I stay available to someone who consistently hurt me? That shift takes courage. It takes self-awareness. But once you make it, you no longer look at silence as weakness. You look at it as the shield it was always meant to be. A boundary that doesn't need explanation. A choice that says, I know who I am, and I won't lower myself to show it. The strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who stays in control. The one who doesn't flinch. The one who chooses calm over chaos every single time. That's what you train for. That's what you build. Not to be cold. Not to be fake. But to be untouchable by the games people play when they know they no longer deserve you. You walk with composure, because they don't deserve access to your confusion. You hold the line because they don't deserve an explanation for why you left. They know. And if they act like they don't, it's only to delay your evolution. You learn that not every insult needs a comeback. Not every lie deserves correction. Some things collapse on their own when you remove your energy from them. Your discipline is the quiet destroyer. It ends their power without raising your voice. It ends the cycle without one last conversation. And when they finally realize that you're not mad, you're just done. That's when it all sinks in. That's when the silence starts to echo louder than anything you could have said. That's when they understand that you didn't leave out of anger. You left because you no longer had anything left to give. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need closure. You didn't need to prove anything. You just needed the strength to be still. And that stillness is what ended everything they thought they could keep controlling. One of the most underestimated forms of strength is emotional detachment from people who once had full access to you. There comes a moment when you stop trying to be heard, understood, validated, or chosen, and instead you choose yourself fully, completely, unapologetically. Not with a dramatic exit, not with a final statement, but with quiet detachment, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not react, not explain, not argue, but become someone they no longer recognize, someone they no longer know how to reach. That shift from emotionally available to emotionally unavailable doesn't need to be announced. It's not a performance. It's a recalibration. You wake up one day and you realize, I'm no longer who I was when I tolerated that. The smartest way to destroy someone who hurt you is not to become cold, bitter, or vengeful. It's to evolve into someone who is unrecognizable to the version of you they once manipulated, dismissed, or used. You become unavailable, not because you're hiding, but because you've outgrown the version of you who tolerated the pain. You are no longer reachable on the frequency they operate on. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. You no longer seek peace in places where chaos lived. You don't circle back. You don't check in. You don't revisit what drained you. You've changed the locks on your energy. And now, only those with matching alignment have access. Distance is not always about geography. Sometimes it's internal. It's emotional. You can be in the same room as someone and still be 1,000 miles away because you've reclaimed your emotional boundaries. That's the kind of distance that stings the most. The kind where your presence is physically there, but your spirit is completely out of reach. That's when they start to notice the shift. That's when they realize that access to you wasn't free. It was a privilege. One they lost the moment they chose ego, disrespect, or betrayal over connection. You don't have to post about your peace to prove you have it. You don't have to speak about your boundaries to make them real. You simply live in a way that reflects them. When they reach out, you don't respond. When they circle back, you don't circle with them. When they try to trigger you, they get silence. That's not avoidance. That's mastery. You've trained yourself to see that not every message deserves a reply, not every attempt at reconnection deserves engagement, and not every apology is genuine. Most people just miss the version of you who tolerated their dysfunction. And when you've healed, you no longer allow that version to come back for anyone. This version of you isn't available for confusion. You no longer interpret mixed signals. You don't decode vague messages. You don't stay up wondering why they acted the way they did. You don't send paragraphs trying to explain how you feel. You simply accept what's shown and you move accordingly. No more assumptions, no more wishful thinking. You are precise now. And that precision becomes your protection. That's the new you. The person they didn't expect you to become. The person who doesn't reach back, doesn't re-explain, doesn't reopen the door. You're done with proving. Done with pleasing. Done with betraying yourself for temporary connection. People often ask what to do when they've been disrespected, lied to, ghosted, manipulated. The answer is simple: become unavailable. Not with revenge, not with drama, but with distance. Because the one thing that toxic, insecure, or manipulative people cannot handle is being ignored by the very person they thought they had control over. They expect you to cry, to lash out, to beg, to spiral. But when you do none of that, when your energy is calm, detached, unbothered, that's when they feel the consequences of their actions in full force. You become unavailable through discipline. You stop following. You stop checking. You stop waiting. You focus so deeply on your healing, your routine, your boundaries, your goals that their presence in your world begins to fade. Not because you forced it, but because you chose to rise beyond it. You don't talk bad about them. You don't tell your friends every detail. You protect your energy like a vault. You don't relive the story. You write a new one. And in that new story, they don't get a role. Not even as a footnote. There is a silence that speaks louder than any confrontation. It says, you no longer exist here. No need for goodbye. No need for closure. You just become unavailable in every way. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You don't need to curse them out. You don't need to watch their downfall. You don't need to hear them apologize. The satisfaction doesn't come from them. It comes from the day you realize you're finally indifferent. That you feel nothing when you hear their name. That you no longer carry the emotional weight they handed you. That you are finally free. And it required no announcement, no revenge, just a quiet shift that they never saw coming. When someone who hurt you tries to return and finds you emotionally unavailable, that's when they feel the most powerless. Because now the door they used to walk through without effort is sealed. Not locked. Not barricaded. Just no longer on the same map. You've moved on. And the air is different where you stand now. They can feel that. They can sense the distance. And the more you stay silent, the more that silence expands. Until eventually, they disappear into it completely. You don't need to fight fire with fire. That's what they want. They want to drag you down to their level, bait you into a scene, make you react so they can twist your reaction into justification for what they did. But that's not your game anymore. You don't live in that frequency. You don't lower yourself to be understood. When someone shows you who they are by hurting you, disrespecting you, betraying your trust, the most devastating thing you can do is rise without them. You stop needing revenge when you realize how powerful you are without it. There's no need to shout. No need to send that final message. No need to expose them. Your growth will do that on its own. You win when you realize you don't need to win anything. You already did the moment you stopped needing to engage. The version of you that needed closure, that needed to be heard, that needed to make them feel what they did to you. She's gone, he's gone. That version got tired of begging people to be better, tired of explaining pain to people who never planned to take accountability for it. And instead of waiting for the apology, you chose to become the person who didn't need it. You chose peace. You chose your standards. You chose silence. And that silence became your shield, your sanctuary, your weapon. Because nothing unsettles someone who hurt you more than watching you become completely unmoved by their presence. That kind of stillness, that's the final blow they never see coming. It's easy to think you need to react to reclaim your power, but you don't. Your lack of reaction is the power. It's what confuses them. It's what breaks the pattern. It's what removes the control they thought they had. They can't manipulate calm. They can't twist silence. They can't spin stillness into chaos. And when they see that you're no longer playing, no longer responding, no longer explaining, just existing beyond their reach, that's when the damage they caused starts to reflect back at them. Not because you send it, but because you no longer carry it. And now they have to hold it alone. Most people believe that not saying anything is weak, that not fighting back is surrender. But silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that your energy is too valuable to be spent in places where it isn't respected. It's knowing that revenge is just another way of staying emotionally attached. You don't need to get even. You don't need to set the record straight. You don't need to prove how much they hurt you. They know. And the longer you stay silent, the more obvious that truth becomes. They'll feel it in the absence of your presence. They'll hear it in the quiet where your voice used to be. They'll look for you in places they used to find you, and realize they no longer have access to any part of you. You don't need to announce your evolution. Let them notice it when they try to provoke the old version of you and she's no longer there. Let them realize it when their apology gets no reply, when their energy gets ignored, when their attempts to pull you back into the story fall flat. That's not being cold. That's being healed. That's being unavailable for patterns that cost you your peace. You destroy the people who hurt you not by becoming like them, but by becoming someone they can no longer reach, predict, or affect. You step into emotional invisibility, not because you're hiding, but because you've grown into someone they simply no longer have the language to access. Let them wonder why you don't care anymore. Let them sit in the silence you left behind. Let them explain your absence however they need to, but don't return to correct it. Don't interrupt the distance. Don't break your peace to clarify your position. They'll get it. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually. Because pain teaches in silence what ego could never hear in noise. And by the time they understand the weight of what they lost, you'll be long gone. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, gone from the version of yourself that once tolerated less than you deserved. You don't win by hurting them back. You win by being too evolved to even consider it. You win by realizing that your time is worth more than retaliation, that your energy is too expensive for cheap drama, that your life, your goals, your peace demand more of you than replays of old pain. So instead of shouting, you upgrade. Instead of chasing, you distance. Instead of needing them to feel your hurt, you allow them to feel your absence. And that absence will echo louder than any words you could have said. That's the kind of revenge they never recover from. The kind where you simply disappear from their world and build one where they no longer exist. You don't carry the wound forward. You carry the wisdom. You move differently. You love differently. You speak differently. Because you've felt what it's like to be broken and build yourself quietly in the dark without applause, without validation, without them. And that strength, that healing, that peace, it cannot be fake, copied, or taken. It is yours, earned, internalized, untouchable. And the next time they try to come close, they won't even recognize the version of you that stands in front of them. Not because you changed for them, but because you changed for you. And that is how you destroy them, without saying a single word,